I'm in Manchester with a legend of the British patriotic movement, a man known to millions, Paul Golding, the leader of Britain First. Paul, you've been through many ups and downs on your journey. You've seen a lot, you've got a lot of experience, and you've had a great education in politics of national survival. I mean, there's been a huge number of attacks upon you from the state, from the media, from other politicians, and recently we've had an attack upon you from Northern Ireland. There was a spotlight programme which made serious allegations against you. How do you respond to that programme?
Just exactly the same way that Tommy Robinson responded to Panorama, which at the same time, or just before, you know, they was trying to fabricate sexual assaults on Tommy Robinson. They was trying to dig up all sorts of stuff. They were trying to pay people to turn on him so that they would have material for a hatchet job programme. You've got to understand that Hope Not Hate teamed up with the BBC at exactly the same time, and they had two targets: Tommy Robinson and Britain First. The Panorama in Northern Ireland was intended to bring Britain First down. The Panorama in England, which was, I think it was John Sweeney, was intended to bring Tommy down. And that is effectively the two biggest kind of patriot movements in Britain neutralised with the use of hatchet jobs. I know for a fact a lot of money was splashed around to try and facilitate those hatchet jobs. We all know what Hope Not Hate are like. We all know what the BBC are like. And they turn their cannons on the two biggest movements at the same time, pretty much, with the same end goal, to try and destroy us. Allegations were made against Tommy, allegations were made against me. I refute all of that nonsense, 100%. You know, there was something like, it was admitted on the programme in Northern Ireland, it was like 40 minutes of recording, and they used, what, 10 seconds. Taken completely out of context. I'd like to hear the rest of the recording, and I'm pretty sure if we did, it would change the context and the impression dramatically. But at the end of the day, people who claim to be patriots and team up with the likes of Hope Not Hate and the BBC, well, I'm lost for words, to be honest, Paul.
Well, it's betrayal in a sense, isn't it?
I'm just lost for words.
If people had serious allegations against you, they should go to the police and there should be a criminal process. To simply turn it into political propaganda is an abuse of you.
With the enemies of British survival, the enemies of the movement, the cause that wants to secure a future for our children, for heaven's sake. Teaming up with the enemies of this country. But do you know what, to be honest, Paul, Tommy Robinson rang me up, he said he don't believe a word of it, he said it's all an absolute disgraceful act of sabotage by joining up with the enemies of our movement. He went through exactly the same thing, and across the board, literally across the board, there's been nothing but contempt and dismissal of this blatant attempt of sabotage from our left-wing opponents and their collaborators.
Well, basically, you've faced campaigns of sabotage on a constant basis ever since you became a big hit on social media. You managed to garner 3 million followers for Britain First, to make Britain First a significant international movement. And this is a movement you started from scratch. Now, you faced an avalanche of abuse from the state, from the police, from the judiciary, from the criminal prosecution service. They have targeted you, and they have tried to criminalise you at every turn for legitimate political activity. You were incarcerated. You've been incarcerated twice. You've had to make great sacrifices for this movement. And now you're facing media hostility, and you've always faced hostility from the left and from the traitors in our midst. Now, that was all turned around very recently when you received an invitation to speak at the Duma in Moscow, in Russia. How did this invitation come about?
Well, Britain First has been gaining international recognition for many years, as I said tonight at this meeting. You know, first of all, because of the acts of persecution made against us in previous years, Donald Trump intervened and retweeted several videos in order to highlight what was happening against us, and there was no other reason for him to do that. He didn't just wake up and think, I'm going to randomly retweet you know, a specific political movement in Britain. It wasn't a spontaneous thing, it was deliberate. It was because at that time, we was all, yourself included, being arrested for hate speech in Belfast.
Yeah.
We went there, we all made speeches, we all got arrested. In the end, we all got found not guilty. But during the period where we were getting arrested, that was when Donald Trump decided to poke Theresa May in the eye and give us a bit of a boost by retweeting some of our videos. And then that was a double-edged sword. It boosted our profile dramatically, enormously. It was an international diplomatic incident, but it caused the British establishment to come down on us like a ton of bricks. And shortly after that, if you remember rightly, we were arrested and prosecuted for exposing some Afghan gang rapists down in Ramsgate in Kent. Yeah. We were put into prison. Everything on the outside fell apart completely. Completely fell apart. And when I came out of prison last summer, there was nothing left. Britain First had collapsed. There was just nothing. Literally nothing. Everything had ground to a halt. Everything had collapsed. Everyone had walked away. So we spent the last year building back up again. And I think we've done, everyone across the board has done a tremendous job in just becoming relentlessly active and regaining the momentum. And this again has been noticed internationally. I was quite shocked recently to have received an invitation to make a speech at the Russian Parliament, the Duma. And myself and several other of senior Britain First officers travelled to Moscow, my first time there, lifelong ambition fulfilled, to be walking around Red Square, where there's so much Russian history, to be inside the Kremlin, and actually we was fortunate enough to actually capture footage of Putin and his cavalcade coming past, you know, his armoured convoy. And it was just a transformative experience. To be sat round a table with some of Donald Trump's closest associates, with members of the Russian Parliament, talking international politics, patriotism, our movements in our respective countries. What are we going to do to save Europe? What are we going to do to you know, for friendship and alliance between Russia and Eastern European countries and countries in Europe and the West? It was just a brilliant affair. It really was.
Now, how are we in Britain going to play our role in this wave of nationalism which is sweeping the West? Obviously, Britain cannot be silent in this. We need to participate in these international conferences to have this exposure. How do you see us fitting in to this revival of the national ideal across the West?
I think it's happening everywhere. And I made this point in my speech in the Russian Duma. I said something along the lines of, our type of politics, a wave of patriotism, a wave of, I think you know, the media calls it populism, nationalism. It's happening all across Europe, it's happening all across the West. In Russia, they are a patriotic, stable, traditional nation once again. You know, back in the 90s it was a farce, wasn't it? Under Putin, he has consolidated that country and made it proud and strong. In America, you've got the Trump phenomenon. In Britain, you've had the Brexit revolution. You've had social media waking up tens of millions of people over the years. Obviously, it's led to violent censorship by the left. But in France, you've got Le Pen and the Front National. And all across Europe, you've got similar things. In Austria, you've got Viktor Orban in Hungary. In fact, we're doing pretty well, and we're making real strides towards restoring national identity and patriotism and traditionalism all across Europe.
But of course, all these national movements are looking to Britain to respond to this. We need to raise our game in this country. And we've had, you know, in the 1990s and the noughties, we had the BNP, which was a powerful force and garnered 1 million votes at its peak. We've had the rise of Britain First, and then it was persecuted by the state and driven off social media, and you've had to rebuild it from scratch again. We've had Tommy. We've had a lot of movements, but we haven't. How would you rate the Brexit movement at the moment? Do you see that as part of the national populist revival?
I do, but not in a direct sense. But it's the effect it's having on the population. It has single-handedly destroyed faith in politics, in politicians.
The Brexit Party.
The Brexit Party, but the whole Brexit issue. Yeah. No one trusts politicians. They've been trying to sabotage the will of the people for years now. And it's the credibility of the establishment and the political elite has crumbled because of Brexit. It was a real own goal for them. And I wish, for all his faults, and all the times he's attacked me and Britain First and other people like Tommy Robinson and Gerard Batten and so on, you know, Nigel Farage is doing a good job on that narrow sense of trying to get Britain out of the EU.
Which is very important.
It's very important. And that will go away at some point, leaving movements like Britain First and so on.
Now it's interesting that Farage is focusing on this EU situation and our need to leave the EU to regain our independence. But there are two other great demons threatening this nation. One is cultural Marxism, which is gutting the morality of this nation and is gutting the sense of identity of this nation. And the other is Islam, a force which has come from outside and which wants to claim dominance in this country. Let's make no mistake about that. Islam is driven to dominate. Which of these threats do you see as the greatest?
I'll tell you what, I always like to think short term and long term. Now, my short term plan is, you know, the problems that are right in front of me right now, the problems that are most expedient, which is rebuilding Britain First, setting up regions, setting up branches, setting up infrastructure, gaining that international contacts and alliances again, and getting ourselves back on our feet. Long term, we're not going to be able to save this country with the present population, with the values and the behaviour and the way of life we have at the moment, which is overwhelmingly liberal, even amongst patriots. We need, Britain First is more than just a political party. It's a movement, it's a revival, it's a renaissance of British values. And unless we get back to gentlemanly ways and, you know, the ways of masculinity and femininity, traditional roles, traditional values, unless we get back, unless we can get out there and change people's mindsets, then we're not going to get anywhere.
It's interesting you should say that, because in 1999, Boris Yeltsin passed away and the baton of the Russian presidency was passed to Vladimir Putin.
Yes.
And he looked at Russia and it was in a mess at the time. And he saw the three strands he needed to mobilise to revive Russia were to revive the spiritual life of Russia, the Russian Orthodox Church, to revive the family life of Russia and increase the Russian birth rate dramatically, and to revive the sense of masculinity in Russia, to revive the Russian military.
Because he knows if you change those values successfully, the rest of it sorts itself out, essentially. You know, if we can bring English men and women, Brits, back to the ways of old, back to rugged masculinity and traditional femininity, if we can do that, if we can restore people's values, spirituality, if we can change people, then everything else will sort itself out eventually.
Now, Putin looked at certain groups in Russian society which he thought could be useful in reviving Russia. Of course, he was a KGB officer, and he looked at his fellow KGB officers and said, these have got the patriotic stuff to revive Russia. Yeah. He looked at the military, and he brought people in from the military also to help in this rebuilding of Russia. And of course, he had to rebuild the economy. He needed entrepreneurs. Now, who are we looking to in Britain? Which groups are we looking to come on board and to rebuild our nation and give Britain a future which comes out of our traditions and our past?
I think that it's going to be nowhere near as easy in Britain as it was in Russia. Nowhere near as easy. It's going to be a 100 years war, so to speak. It's not going to be a quick overnight fix. It's not going to be a revolution. It's going to be a long, grinding war of attrition to regain our country, and it's going to take generations, Paul.
But you're looking at ex-military people to come on board. You're looking at people in the state, maybe the state security. I'm talking about the police now, MI5, MI6. You're looking at people involved in other political parties to engage with you and to join you in this battle, because we need to gather people from different areas of British society. Which areas of British society look the most promising to revive our nation, to revive patriotism?
I think things are going to happen naturally. I think there's going to be a slow decline. I don't think there's going to be a revolution. I don't think it's going to happen overnight. I think there'll be a slow, grinding decline. Obviously, in 1969 in Northern Ireland, you had a spark, but I think Britain will have many sparks And I think it will be just like it was in Northern Ireland, where essentially they fought each other to a stalemate, and it had to carry on and carry on and carry on.
It's interesting you mentioned Northern Ireland, because you've looked and seen how the loyalists in Northern Ireland mobilised their people in order to defend themselves, as an example. Are the loyalists of Northern Ireland an example to the rest of us in Britain, how we need to be organised and how we need to think in order to survive?
Absolutely. And they organised on a community level. They had their defence organisations, they had their political parties. You know, they really, in every way, mobilised their entire community for national survival. And, you know, it was a terrible struggle, but that's nothing compared, in my opinion, to what's coming in Britain. Nothing.
Well, this is the reality. What is coming in Britain? We've seen in 1971, there were 80,000 Muslims in the United Kingdom. Today, we know there's over 4 million. We don't know how many. It could be as many as 5 or 6 million. But it's growing rapidly, faster than ever. This Islamic community is taking territory, it's taking over towns, it's taking political authority, it's taking over councils, it's taking over our capital city, London. It's the Home Secretary, Sajid Javid, he's a Muslim. At every level in our society. David Cameron said, I want the Muslims to be at every level of our society.
He said he wants to see a Muslim Prime Minister.
Yeah.
And Tony Blair did as well.
How long have we got to resist this Muslim tide?
It's not going to be, you know, people expect, you know, in 10 years there'll be a civil war, we'll win and we'll take our country back. It's going to be not nowhere near as simple as that. There is going to be 100 years of strife and conflict and bloodshed. And the problem we have is demographics. The present population is not reproducing, but on the other side of the fence, Islamic communities are reproducing rapidly. So what you're going to have now is an overwhelming situation where we're still the majority by a long way, but in a generation it's going to almost level out, and everyone's going to think, what happened? Where did, you know? It's going to be a shock to a lot of people, and then you're going to see almost a complete disintegration in society. You're going to see the state coming down heavily on people like me, organisations, movements, trying to restore order, just like they did in Northern Ireland. Both sides of the fence.
Now you've seen Donald Trump engineer a revival of the American spirit and the life of the American nation. But Donald Trump wants to save the whole of Western civilization. We've seen Vladimir Putin engineer the rebirth of Russia. But Vladimir Putin wants to save Christendom. We've seen movements like Salvini. Salvini has said, I want to save the whole of Europe from Islam, from Islamic extremism. Is our saviour actually going to come from abroad? Will these people watch Britain crumble and fall to Islam, or will they intervene to save us?
I think that our country will crumble, and I think there will be gargantuan levels of bloodshed and carnage and street strife. And
that's a horrific picture.
Absolutely, it's going to happen. You know, look at birth rates, look at trends. It's going to happen. There's nothing we can do to stop it. All we can do is carve ourselves out a remnant, and then. This is why they're so anti-Putin. People don't understand what's going on here. The left, the globalists think long term. They look at what's happening in Europe and they can't finish the job with Russia on the doorstep, ready to intervene, ready to support, ready to provide aid. They can't do it. So that's why they're so desperate to try and topple Putin. And they use the same weapons they're doing against us. Character assassination, hatchet jobs, the fake news media like the BBC, Panorama, etc. They use traitors, they use black ops, they use false criminal charges. I said all of this in the Duma.
We have to turn the tables on the globalists. We have to make them feel threatened. We have to make them feel vulnerable. We have to make them feel that they're in danger of imminent collapse. Now, if Donald Trump wins a second term as president,
which he will,
are you confident about
100%.
What does that? What message? What will that mean for the globalists?
That will mean another 4 or 5 years of a man in the White House at the highest levels. Not only, you don't understand. He's single-handedly destroyed the credibility of the fake news media. Every single day, he's attacking the fake news media, the political left, the socialists. He's winning. If he comes to the end of his second term. And he hasn't achieved anything within the American political system, which is so bogged down in bureaucracy. You know, it's hard getting anything through both houses of Congress. It's just a nightmare. I wouldn't like to be president of the United States because your wings are clipped in so many ways. It's pointless to a degree.
But he's changing the whole ethos of the nation.
He's winning the argument, and that is having such a spill-on effect across the West. He's winning the argument. He's talking about the fake news, the political left. He's talking about immigration. He's talking about radical Islamic terrorism. He's talking about Muslim bans. He's talking about all these things, and he's winning the argument for the rest of us. And that is going to be his greatest achievement, his greatest contribution.
I'll finish on this, Paul. We grew up in a paradigm where the left was on the march and was taking ground and was reshaping the way we think and behave in our society. It was imposing upon us a pattern of thought and behaviour which was alien to our traditional way of life. That paradigm that the left has pushed on us is now crumbling across the West. It's not going to be sustained. And do you see great hope that we can replace that leftist paradigm which has caused so much damage to our society with a nationalist paradigm which will lead to the re-emergence of the West, like Russia with Putin, as a vibrant, vigorous society with hope for the future?
Yes, and I think it's going to take, but I will caution most people out there watching this, it's going to take a lot longer than people expect. And it's going to be a lot worse than people expect. And it's because they're not going to go silently into the night, whether it's radical Islam or the political left. It is going to be a long, hard fight. It's going to take a long time.
Okay, thank you. Cheers, Paul.
God bless.
We're looking for funds, really, to promote this work that we're doing. So if you support us and you want to invest in this battle to save our nation, there's a PayPal link in the description. If you can, please make a donation. Make sure you subscribe to our channel. Ring the bell as well so you get a notification of any future videos we make. We're turning out 2, 3, 4 videos a week now, and we're going to keep on this battle until we win. Thank you.